I recently did a review of the sandwich dial Torbollo Chronograph, and this is a follow-up video to that review where I'm going to compare it directly to its inspiration, the Timex Weekender chronograph. So let's get to it. If you saw my previous comparison video, which was of the Vostok Amphibia and the Seiko SNK, I'll be using the same 10 categories to compare these watches. Then I'll total up the score. Let's start off by looking at the cases of the watches. While the Torbollo is a black-coated stainless steel, the Weekender is a chrome-coated brass. The finishing on both cases is about the same, both having a smooth coated feel to it. The other differences is on the case backs. Both are stainless steel. The Torbollo is a screw-down polished stainless steel caseback, whereas the Timex is a polished stainless steel snap-off caseback. Now all Timexes are snap-off, and I hate snap-offs, so normally the Torbollo would easily win this. But the quality of the metal and finishing on the Timex's caseback is much better than the Torbollo's. But regardless, the Torbollo wins this category because it has an all stainless steel case compared to the Timex's brass. Now let's look at the straps. The Weekender Chrono comes with a variety of straps. This specific one is a leather NATO. The Torbollo as well comes with a variety of straps. But since only the black version has that special sandwich dial, I'll compare it directly to this one, which is a thin nylon NATO strap. While that thin nylon NATO is usable, it is very similar to something you would find on a cheap backpack, and I believe that any of the Weekender Chronos would have a much better strap than that. So, a point for the Timex. So, let's go on to the watch's movements, both of which are quartz chronograph type movements. The Torbollo uses an off-brand Sunon PE90, while the Timex uses their standard chrono movement. There are some differences between the movement, but the biggest difference is in the accuracy between the two. When I reviewed the Torbollo, I found it to be plus 2.3 seconds fast a day, which is pretty bad for quartz, while the Weekender was only 0.3 seconds fast a day. Now it's possible that I got a bad Torbollo, but I have to review what I have. In which case, this is an easy win for the Timex. Let's look at what I call the functionality and usability of the watches. Since the Torbollo is an homage to the Timex, there really isn't going to be much difference in how the watches wear or the ease of use of the dials. So the two major differences are in how the chronograph operates and the looms of the respective watches. The Torbollo has one advantage, in that its chronograph subdial goes out to an hour, compared to Timex's 30 minutes. The Timex, on the other hand, operates more like a traditional chronograph, where the center seconds hand is actually reserved for the chronograph, and one of the subdials is reserved for the seconds of the actual time. It additionally has a subdial for fractions of a second, something the Torbollo doesn't have. Instead, the Torbollo has a subdial for 24 hours, which may actually be more useful in everyday situations. But regardless, the Timex wins out in this category due to its loom and indiglow. Where the Torbollo has a cool loom effect with the sandwich dial, the loom on its hands are barely visible and thus are not necessarily functional for telling time. Now compared to the Timex, whose loom on its hands are not necessarily that great, but it is still usable, and more importantly it has the indigo function to make it even more usable in dark lighting conditions. So let's talk about versatility, and this is a tough one. Versatility to me is how many different situations can you use that watch in, such as maybe dressing up a sport watch to use in a more formal situation, or say a second time zone for traveling. Since these watches are pretty identical, I can't really see any major differences. So for this category, I'm going to call it a tie. Let's move on to durability. Now first off, both of these watches are rated to 30 meter water resistance, which really isn't that great, but it is what it is. Supposedly, they also both have mineral glass crystals. And from a design standpoint, I don't see much of a difference that would cause any major change in durability between the two watches. So I think in this category, I again have to call it a tie. Let's talk about what I call perceived quality, which is the perceived quality control coming from the factory. As in, if you buy this watch online, what are the odds of receiving a watch with a problem? Or if you do have a problem, how easy is it to remedy that situation? So for this category, I think Timex gets an easy win. Since the Torbollo is primarily available only online through AliExpress and is shipped directly from China. If there's an issue with the Timex Weekender Chrono, it should be much easier to return it to where you bought it from, or even to ask Timex to fix it under warranty. Versus the Torbollo, where if there is a problem, it's probably going to cost just as much to ship it back to China as it did to actually buy the watch in the first place. So, another point for the Timex. So let's talk about the designs, which again is a tough one. Since the Torbollo really is based off the Weekender, it uses its basic design. And in some ways, I think the Timex should automatically get the point since they're the ones who originated the design. But the black Torbollo with the sandwich dial took things a step further. Now, while the loom on that sandwich dial of the Torbollo doesn't last very long, it is very striking when it is fully charged. So while that sandwich dial is not necessarily very usable, I think it is a better watch from a style standpoint. So in this case, the Torbollo gets the point. The next category is what I call uniqueness. As in, what is special about that watch or brand? What is the thing that gives it a special place in your collection? Or if someone asks you about that watch, how much can you have to actually say about it? While the Weekender Chrono is a great watch, it's not necessarily a very unique watch. And even though the Torbollo is designed after the Weekender, that sandwich loom dial is different, especially for a very inexpensive watch. So in this case, I feel like I should give the Torbollo the point for uniqueness. So the last category is value, which is a very subjective category. Now, if we were just talking price, this would be easy. It's a $60 Timex versus an $18 off-brand. But it's not just about price. It's about value. So while the Torbollo is inexpensive and unique for having that great-looking sandwich dial, I don't really feel it is a good watch. It's more of a cheap beater or an inexpensive gift to give someone, rather than a watch that you should get for yourself. Whereas the Timex is still a very inexpensive watch at $60, but it is also attractive looking and a very reliable watch. So for me, the Timex definitely has the better value. Now, totaling the scores, the Timex wins with a score of 5 compared to the Torbollo's 3. And I can't agree more with the scoring. As I said in my review of the Torbollo, it's a great looking watch, but I don't really think it's a great watch. While all of these inexpensive off-brands from China can be tempting, and there may be some hidden gems hidden in AliExpress, I think most of the time, you really are going to get what you pay for. So this is my second comparison video, and I've used the same categories for scoring that I did before, but I am seeing some potential overlap in those categories. So let me know what you think, not just about the watches, but about the categories I'm using for scoring. If there's something I'm forgetting or something I should just completely get rid of, let me know. But thanks for watching, and as always, like, comment, and subscribe.